Have you ever thought about what the word tasty means? How is it tasty? Properly fried, salty enough, with the right temperature? Why does the same meal seem tasty to some people and gross to others? Take oysters and artichokes, for example. There are always those who adore them and those who just can't understand them, let alone dried grasshoppers or caterpillars. Generally speaking, tastes differ.
The taste is the emerging feeling. This is the product of neuronal activity of our brain, which occurs as a result of interaction of three systems. These are the taste system, the main structures of which are located on the tongue, the olfactory system, and the trigeminal nerve, which transmits the information about temperature and some other physical and chemical stimuli that emerge in the process of chewing.
Taste perception starts in the mouth cavity, more precisely in the tongue, with the help of special taste cells. Their task is the primary analysis of food, on the basis of which the brain makes the vitally important decision, to eat or not to eat. Food is the source of the necessary energy in the first place. The most caloric foods undergo strict control. Potentially hazardous products, for example, those containing toxins, are rejected.
The taste system is organized in the form of taste buds. They are dense associates of approximately 50 to 100 cells. The buds are organized into taste papillae, which are very well packaged into the tissues of the tongue epithelium. This form of organization largely predetermines the process that occurs when food appears in the mouth cavity.
When we eat or drink, various substances dissolve in the saliva and reach the so-called receiving section of a taste cell, the apical membrane. As a result of the interaction of the molecules with receptor proteins of the apical membrane, intracellular processes are launched, which activate the cell. Through synaptic contacts, the excitation is transmitted to nerve tissue and then to the brain. We feel the taste. It should be noted that certain taste buds only react to their respective stimulant substances.
Taste buds are organized into taste papillae of three types: circumvallate, foliate, and clavate. Clavate papillae are located on the tip of the tongue. Foliate are deep at the sides. Circumvallate papillae are located on the top surface near the larynx.
Circumvallate papillae mostly include the cells perceiving the bitter taste, while those responsible for sweet are practically absent. Clavate papillae are responsible for the perception of sweet and salty. Foliate ones for the sour taste. By the way, the pimples located on the tongue are actually the clavate papillae, each of which contains 50 to 100 taste cells. However, this is not to say that either type of the taste papillae perceives no stimulant but its own. They are all sensitive to the so-called taste modalities, but to various extents. The taste system of a human is only capable of guessing 5 basic tastes. They serve as a basis for all taste sensations that food evokes in us: sour, sweet, salty, bitter, and umami, Japanese for pleasant. This taste is caused by amino acids and peptides, in particular, sodium glutamate. But what about gust? Gust, or acrid flavor, is not considered one of the main tastes, as the corresponding taste receptors haven't been found. The substances that stimulate heat receptors, the so-called vanilloid receptors, thus making their contribution to our perception of food, cause this sensation.
The thing is that a vanilloid receptor is a temperature sensor and a chemical sensor at the same time. The result is actually the same. You can change its activity with the help of a temperature increase or using a chemical agent. The result would be the same.
Regardless of the existence of only 5 key tastes, which seems to limit the number of possible variants, each of us will perceive the same meal prepared by the same cook in a different manner. Taste sensations are at their fullest when all 5 senses are at work. For example, when we hear the food crunch or being chewed in our mouth, it increases our appetite. This is the origin of the Russian saying, "He's eating so greedily that it's cracking behind his ears." It's interesting that teeth also participate in taste perception. They are surrounded by nerve endings that inform us about the texture of the food in our mouth. Chewing muscles, in their turn, transmit the signals about the hardness of the food.
We have different olfaction, different mechanical sensitivity, and different thresholds. Our tasting systems are organized in a slightly different manner because the number of taste cells may vary. We can have slightly different receptors due to the fact that our genomes are varied. Any sensation is a product not only of molecular organization, but also of education. Let's take people's love for Roquefort. For example, in France, it is considered an excellent product, while people who have never tasted it usually feel disgusted when they taste it for the first time.
It is known that 15 to 25% of people are the so-called super tasters. Super tasters are the individuals who have more taste papillae and receptors on their tongues than other people. Super tasters have a super sensitive taste. They like food that is somewhat bitter but nutritious.
We are going to prepare a meal that will be based on a milk-fed lamb. We're using wild garlic. It has been collected here, in the Karelian forest, so to say. There is also watercress grown on the Russian soil, as well as local spinach, garlic, and green onions. Well, and we have the acridist garlic, of course. It is obviously going to dominate. That is, there will be the tie between the taste of the main product, which is lamb, and the combination of garlic, wild garlic, and watercress. The onions make the taste deeper, and of course, the morel sauce with a pronounced wine taste is a nice finishing touch.
Andrei is the chef of one of the Moscow restaurants. His experience includes working in some of the best restaurants in the world, and virtually all of them knowing the taste of the client was the main principle of work.
This is actually very important. This is one of the basic moments concerning the menu and the composition of meals. You have to understand who you are cooking for. You can't cook something that people won't understand, or from something that people won't accept. Of course, you can add interesting compositions from different regions. That is, there is a golden rule. The best kitchen is the one that uses products grown not farther than 300 kilometers from the location of the restaurant.
For the cook, the meal that they are cooking is not just a combination of certain ingredients creating one taste or another. This is like a work of art, in which the elements are in the right place and in which they only resonate when combined correctly.
Taste, for me, is a real story. This is like a real trip. Everything starts with a specific idea of the season. Then I think about how it will look, how it will taste in the first place. I think about what I want to communicate to the guest. This is why it takes me a long time to think. Sometimes there are moments when I'm empty and there's nothing in my head, and that's why I don't do anything. And then there are moments when I think of millions of dishes. This is when I start doing something. But actually, I always try to understand who is going to sit on the chair, because he will eat the very thing I'll make. What mechanism works in his brain when he decides whether it is good or bad, whether it is tasty or not. And I start cooking, start inventing something, and I'm experimenting all the time.
But our perception of taste is influenced not only by the correct ratio of ingredients, the specific volumes that can be measured, weighed, washed, and sliced. It is also influenced by something that can't be analyzed or evaluated at all, by our emotions.
It's like a person painting a picture. If they are in a bad mood, they are going to paint something negative. The same with the cook. If he is in a bad mood, he's going to cook something negative. There's energy transmitted with food. That is, there is a certain magic in addition to the taste and the action. It can be checked. There is an opinion that if you make brioches, for example, brioche is a kind of bread. It contains a lot of butter, and it expands approximately 15 times. Naturally, if the mood is bad, it will expand much less than 15 times. That is, the influence is most prominent with bakery, with confectionery. Your mood means a lot. This is why when we teach our cooks, when we create a team, we always say, we're not against your life situations. We're always ready to hear them out, but not in the kitchen.
With age, each of us accumulates our own background of knowledge, and the food is no exception here. All our taste preferences are the result of trial and error, our experience. It tells us what to eat when we're hungry, but what's the feeling that makes us want to eat?
Hunger is the state of a person or an animal that makes them search for food. This condition occurs when food motivation is present, and food motivation is based on our food demand. The food demand occurs when the level of nutrients, in particular glucose, in the blood is reduced below a specific level. This is the basic chain of the emergence of hunger.
Of course, our hunger is nothing compared to what our far ancestors used to experience. Throughout its history, mankind has always been undernourished. Hunger was the most loyal of our companions. The food, which was procured with such hardship, could be taken away by stronger tribesmen, an enemy tribe, or the owner of the land. This is not to mention crop failures, time and duration of which couldn't be predicted. However, regardless of the incredible abundance, just like tens of thousands of years ago, it's this hunger that reigns over us and makes us look for food.
An empty stomach has a certain motor function. It is transmitted to the center, to the central nervous system, where this motor function is estimated, and the brain understands that the stomach is empty, and that it needs to fill this emptiness a little somehow. If we are talking about the feeling of hunger, which is a metabolic concept associated with reduced level of nutrients in the blood, this is a completely different thing. This is because the human body, just like an animal's body, has a huge number of storage sites. When a person doesn't eat due to some reason, or an animal fails to find some food, the storage sites release those nutrients, and a person doesn't notice that there are some troubles in their body.
The so-called energy storage sites are our fatty tissue. At the expense of accumulated fatty deposits, a person with a normal can remain hungry for 2 months. Moreover, fat is a kind of a water storage facility. It is deposited differently in different people. However, no one likes how and where it is. Proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are equally useful for the body, but carbohydrates are still the most important. Carbohydrates are the main source of glucose, an extremely important source of energy for all body cells. Most carbohydrates are immediately taken up by our brain as soon as we receive them.
Glucose is the main nutrient. It is most easily metabolized. The thing is that our brain consumes the greatest amount of energy. This is why the light energy in the form of glucose, in particular, is necessary for the brain. If the glucose level is low, the brain goes out, and the body cannot work and extract food, it dies.
For this scenario, we have an additional insurance system. It consists of special receptor cells, which constantly monitor the content of various substances, but pays most attention to the glucose level.
These cells can be found not only in the brain, they are also present in the brain, in hypothalamus, which controls general metabolism and energy consumption. It analyzes the status. Do we have enough fats or sugar, for example, in our body? Or do we need to increase consumption?
Receptor cells, the so-called taste-like cells, can be found in all inner organs, including lungs and trachea. Their task is to analyze the inhaled air for the presence of lethally dangerous toxins. They monitor chemical composition of blood even in the blood. Protection from harmful environmental factors is their area of responsibility. But let's get back to hunger. What kind of feeling it is? Why does it make us forget about everything in the world? Whatever we do, however interested we are in the things around us, as soon as hunger reminds us of itself, everything else recedes into the background, and the imagination feeds us with pictures, which become more and more appetizing from one time to another. And there would hardly be pictures of fresh vegetable salads. Most likely, it will be the most caloric food you've ever tasted. But hunger and satiation are connected not only to the calories contained in products and not only to energy. The feeling of food in the mouth, its consistency and temperature are just as important. The feeling of satiation comes when we get what we expected.
As soon as the feeling of hunger, the motivation emerges, a certain reflection of the results that a person wants to achieve is formed in their brain. For example, they want to have some roasted beefsteak with onions. They go and have some. This beefsteak had formed in the action result acceptor before they actually ate that. But after they eat it, their achievement, the result of the action, is compared to what was contained in the action result acceptor. If those two concepts coincide, there will be a pleasant sensation, a positive emotion. There will be either negative or positive emotion. It will always occur due to coincidence or non-coincidence of the planned with the received in the action result acceptor.
This is why the disappointment from the meal that didn't live up to our expectations makes us want to eat more and more, returning to the fridge again and again, although we aren't physically hungry at all at that point.
You have to understand where you go and why you go there. If you're going to a gastronomic restaurant with sophisticated cuisine, you should come there with your stomach half full in order to avoid the situation when you come there to it. You actually come there for some new and interesting culinary experiences. If you go to a simple brasserie, to a cafe, or a regular restaurant, that's a completely other thing. The size of the meal varies depending on that. Why the portions have been and still are small in some places. This is not because they're greedy. As a rule, there are 5 to 7 courses in the menu where the cooks want to demonstrate their skills in a wider range. This is why they make small portions. And of course, this is if for the customers not to eat too much. The most important thing is that when a person finishes their meal, they don't have a sensation of heaviness, as if they ate too much. Everything has to be moderate.
Eating moderately is a difficult task for most people in the modern world. Despite the abundance and availability of information on healthy food, most of us don't follow even a 10th part of these rules, including the well-known rule of leaving the table with a feeling of light hunger.
If a person gets the food they wanted, received it, eat it, and felt pleased, the same mechanisms that activate during drug admission are activated. The very same mechanisms are at work. This is the positive reinforcement system.
This is a frequent reason behind overeating. It is extremely difficult to get distracted from the source of pleasure, which is also so available. You just want the pleasure to last forever.
Food totally forms physical addiction. This addiction is what gets built into metabolism. The drugs that cause physical addiction are known as hard drugs. Heroin, for example. It gets built into metabolism, and its cancellation later leads to extremely unpleasant consequences. Likewise, the cancellation of food will lead to the same adverse consequences. A person suffers. They experience negative emotions because he's physically addicted.
The American scientists Wansink brothers have conducted an unusual research. They were looking for the reason behind food addiction of modern people and analyzed paintings. Researchers have studied the works of art depicting a biblical event, Christ's last meal. The scientists were interested in the size of the meals. Though the food is supposed to be ritual and festive, artists from different ages rarely considered this fact. This is why all kinds of products ended up on the table. However, the computer calculations prove today we eat 2 times more than our ancestors did in the time of Christ. Nobody knows what we are going to eat 2,000 years from now, but there's one thing that we can be sure about. It would be different to prepare a capsule with the right ratio of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates to deliciously smelling food cooked on an open fire. To rephrase the famous expression, food doesn't just have to be healthy, it also has to be tasty. How often we yield to the temptation and choose the most beautiful meal or the brightest package when studying menus in a restaurant or a window shop. This is just the way we are. Attractive appearance has almost a magical effect on us.
Bright colors evoke appetite. Orange and yellow are appetizing colors associated with fruits, orange, peach, pineapple, which attract us to food and excite our appetite. Green colors are used in combination. The meal necessarily has to be harmonious.
The color of the food is the first thing we notice, but the presentation contributes just as much. This is why at culinary studies, the correct and beautiful arrangement of meals is taught as much as baking and frying tricks. Even if you buy food in a street cafe, try to get it out of the package, arrange it beautifully on the plate, and decorate with garnish, and you'll feel the difference immediately.
Food is another kind of fashion. Something new appears every day. You have to see how people dress in Milan, in Paris, for example, how they dress. I visit other countries all the time to see what is going on with food, in particular. Laying plays an important part today. Before, it was just important to take a beautiful plate. Now it is not enough. You need something more. Perhaps put a beautiful spoon at the side, some desk under the plate, a napkin perhaps, a salt cellar. Well, there are a lot of things you have to consider when creating meals.
We obtain most information about the world through vision. Everything we see is transformed into electrical signals, which are processed in the occipital part of the cerebral complex. After that, our brains issued a verdict on what we see and whether we like it. It happens in a fraction of a second.
The appearance of food is not so important for animals as it is for humans, as the aesthetic feeling is more inherent in human nature.
You have to agree. We don't actually know which meal is going to be tastier, but the picturesque image makes us expect something more. What is the secret? It is the mechanism known as expectation. The higher the promise, the stronger the expected effect is. But will our perception of taste change if we eat blindfolded?
Today we are going to cook 3 types of warm salads. Accordingly, we start with the lamb tongue salad, which includes about 15 to 17 ingredients. We will try to hide them in the salad so that they will be unrecognizable.
Let's conduct an unusual experiment. We've invited 3 participants, Anna, Igor, and Soren, for a dinner, but they will have to eat in the dark, or with a blindfold on their eyes, to be precise.
There is a certain rule in cooking that a meal cannot contain several strongly pronounced products. The products are selected in such a manner that they can harmonize with each other, preventing the so-called mind explosion. The brain perceives too many bright tastes, it gets lost. 2, and it doesn't understand what is happening. There is such a mishmash, so to say. Therefore, the meal must be harmonious in any case, and the main product must be the so-called 1, 2, 3. These are the most prominent products in the meal. The rest shall be less piquant, simply complementing and accentuating the product.
None of the participants knows what exactly will be on their plates. They have to try and guess the meal and its ingredients as accurately as possible. Let's see how our taste perception works without a hint of vision. Igor, are you ready to taste the meal that is in front of you? Yes. Have your feelings changed after you've been blindfolded?
Yes. Since the vision is blocked, the hearing began working much better, of course, and the sense of smell too. But it's also confusing.
As soon as I got blindfolded, I started trying to feel the smells. My sense of smell enhanced, and I was trying to sniff what was near me and how it smells.
The first meal is a salad. Anna's plate contains zucchini, eggplants, mushrooms, and tomatoes, with the addition of Parmesan and ginger. Soren's main ingredients are lamb tongue, pickled honey fungi, fresh cucumbers, and tomatoes, as well as ginger and garlic. Igor has chicken hearts, potatoes, grapes, baked onions, and salad leaves. Let's see what the participants will be able to guess. It feels like when your eyes are covered, there's a pressure upon the stomach, right? You want to taste it, to have some of it all. There are chicken hearts.
There's something big.
Is it a leg? I have a salad leaf, potatoes, and chicken hearts.
I've got the same stuff, I guess.
Well, perhaps. Soren, yeah, what do you have?
Well, there's this green on my plate, and it is in the form of whole branches. There's also some kind of dressing.
I'm definitely going to refuse to eat this meal because I think that there's chicken heart there. And I don't eat it. Even if I'm very hungry or about to die, I won't eat it.
Even with your eyes closed?
Open, closed for the money. I won't do it.
So what did our participants eat according to themselves? There was definitely a chicken heart. Then there were potatoes and some salad. Arugula or freeze, I guess. Also grapes and a mayonnaise-based sauce.
There was rucola and some other salad, I guess. And if Igor hadn't said that there was a chicken heart, I would have thought that it could be pickled apple or some vegetable, but in some strange marinade. I didn't taste anything else.
I guess there are cucumbers, Tomatoes are questionable since I can't taste them. And one thing I'm sure about is the use of greens. There's a lot of green, right? And it has a slightly bitter taste.
Igor was the only participant who managed to identify the contents of the plate accurately, but the feeling of taste of Anna and Soren let them down.
Oh, where's the heart? Oh, I can't see it. There were mushrooms. My God, that's so confusing. Where's the heart? Do I have a heart? No heart.
No heart.
Why did you? They were porcini mushrooms.
No, they weren't.
They were porcini mushrooms.
It's not a mushroom. But let's continue. Perhaps it'll be easier for our participants to guess meat or poultry than a vegetable mix. Soren's main ingredient is lamb. Anna has fish. And Igor has chicken fillet. There's curry, meat, peas. Perhaps. I think that the meat is veal or beef. And a lot of spices.
Well, this is some tasty meat.
I'm inclined to think that this is chicken meat. This is a chicken breast cut into even pieces, into cubes. There's also hot pepper, scalding with its amount. I think there's not just curry, but also hot pepper.
Surprisingly, this time none of the participants managed to identify what was on their plates. First, I thought it was beef, but it appeared to be chicken.
Yes, this is curry. This is tomato. This is cream. But this is most definitely chicken. It's white. This is chicken, not veal.
Are you sure?
I'm in doubt, of course. Could it be some sort of seafood? It doesn't look like it. Perhaps it's fish. I guess it's fish. Halibut, perhaps.
I understand now that this is not chicken. This is a very delicate stewed beef, perhaps. I'm surprised that I didn't get the meat right.
It looks different when your eyes are closed. Is the meal tastier without the blindfold or not? No, I think it was tastier with a blindfold. Our experiment is over. Being deprived of the ability to see, our participants relied on other feelings, which took over the process of taste perception. But it turns out that our olfaction and memory of certain products are easily deceived. Food is an extremely powerful emotional stimulus. Memories of some bright event of life are most definitely associated with something special. Nostalgia is what makes a certain product unique, but does it matter that everything used to be tastier before?
First of all, the taste depends on chemical composition. Of course, the taste of modern products is formed by the chemical substances included in their composition. We can't compare the products that we had on our table 100 years ago with the ones we have now. Undoubtedly, the industrial production changes chemical composition of products to a great extent. But without it, it would be impossible to produce the products that would satisfy high modern requirements for food industry and its products. Since the products have to be stored for a long time, otherwise the manufacturer would never be able to sell them, they must be packed conveniently, remain safe throughout their useful life, look and taste pleasant, and attract the consumer in order for the purchase to be repeated again and again, along with consumption of certain products. We are used to the kind of food that is different from what our fathers and grandfathers used to eat. We are not accustomed to these products. It hasn't been used before, and its production without the use of food additives is impossible.
The history of food additives lasts for centuries. Salt and pepper are the most ancient of them. Today, this list has increased thousands of times. How safe an additive is and whether it is approved for the world market is decided by the Alimentarius Codex Commission. It includes representatives from over 130 countries of the world. Safety tests often last for decades and are performed in several stages.
During the tests, the maximum permissible concentration of a certain substance, which is harmless to humans, is established. Well, you know that some people like to eat more, while others like to eat less. For those who like to eat more of a certain product, for the lovers of certain products, so to speak, the safety factor of 100 is established. And this maximum permissible concentration, which is harmless to humans, is divided by 100. Only in this concentration that substance can be used as a food additive. And the manufacturer is not interested in exceeding the level of this additive in a food product over the level necessary for its process goals.
Flavor intensifiers are leaders among food additives. They enhance perception, stimulating nerve endings in the tongue. This is why sauces and ketchups taste spicier to us. Nuts, mushrooms, crisps, and cheese acquire the pronounced taste, and confectionery products have fruity aromas.
Due to this quick freeze, the so-called shock freeze, which is performed with liquid nitrogen, everything that is in fruit is preserved very well. This applies to various vitamins and things like that as well. The main aspect for me here is the taste. That is, it tastes just like fresh strawberries and bananas.
If I see what I eat or drink, I think that I feel the taste more clearly. I suspect that there are strawberries in the sorbet, since it is pink and tastes more or less like that. But I also feel that there's something else. For example, I can suggest that there is a banana, for instance, but it will give a specific banana taste, which I'm not tasting at all. I can feel that there is some additional taste, something sour, like kiwi, or something like that.
Apparently, our perception is not influenced solely by the appearance of the product. Everyone knows a regular cold and running nose can change the taste of food drastically.
Perception is always a complex of sensations. This is because when you chew food, aromatic substances are released in your body. These substances, in gaseous form, reach the receptors in the nasal cavity by means of the so-called retronasal way. That is, from the mouth cavity to the nasal pharynx, the sense of smell is thus stimulated. And the perception of the food will be formed on the basis of the complex of these sensations.
Thousands of smells surround us. Tiny particles of all kinds of substances are constantly present in the air. Some of them generate strong smells, others merely sensible ones. Everything that exists in nature has its unique flavor. While 90% of information is perceived by a human through vision, olfaction only takes about 2%. But sometimes these 2% are much more important than vision.
Smell plays a huge part. If food smells disgusting, it means that it is spoiled. In the eating behavior, the smell plays the part of a safety mechanism. It protects us from spoiled food, from poisoning. The main protective function is olfaction.
The base is the same for everyone, perhaps. And the acuteness of perception will depend on the person's experience, on how often they taste different products, on how deep they think about the sensations they experience while tasting certain products. There may be certain dysfunctions in the olfaction and tasting systems which certainly influence our perception.
Smell has a powerful effect on our subconscious. Remember how often you experience the desire to smell a certain product? This is one of our primary reactions. It is known that each element contains several dozen compounds. The smell of coffee, for example, is woven of over 1,500 substances. The smell of meat includes about 300 of them. In terms of olfactory acuity, all living creatures are divided into three groups. Anosmatics, dolphins, for example, don't sense any smells at all. Macrosmatics, on the other hand, possess perfect olfaction. This group includes almost all predators and rodents. The last group is known as microsmatics. Humans belong to this last group.
All right, what's been bothering you?
The problem is that I don't feel any smell at all, and I've been realizing lately that I stopped sensing taste.
Let's go into details a little. What happened to you? When did it all start?
Well, about a week ago, I was riding a horse, and that time, I wasn't wearing a helmet. The horse started running, and I fell down. I didn't lose consciousness. I got up pretty normally.
Did you hit the back of your head?
Yes, I did hit the back of my head.
Or was it some other part?
Right. After that, I noticed. I came home and started eating, and I realized that there was no smell.
That is, you can't distinguish between tastes. You can't tell sweet from salty. Or do you recognize some small tastes?
Well, let's say I can taste something. That is, that something is sour or salty, but I can't tell whether there are strawberries.
Well, that is,
I don't feel the subtlety of taste.
the subtle tastes become more difficult to perceive, right?
Right, I can't. I can't identify them. Therefore, I don't have any pleasure from food.
In the process of evolution, humans lost the ability to distinguish smell nuances. Some scientists believe that the sections of the brain that used to be responsible for smelling acuity, one of the most important functions in the wild nature, have retrained over the millions of years of evolution. Now they ensure processes that are more important for us: thinking, decision-making, imagination, and memory. As compared to our closest relatives, the higher primates, our ability to perceive smells is below average. But losing even a part of this ability means losing the taste for life.
The loss of the sense of smell can be caused by several factors, and there are two main problems. The first group of problems includes pathological processes occurring in the nasal cavity. That is, there are various mechanical obstacles preventing the airstream from reaching the olfactory epithelium. These may include curvatures of the nasal septum, polyps, or hypertrophy of the mucous membrane. These are all mechanical obstacles that prevent the smelled substance from reaching the olfactory epithelium in one way or another. The second large group includes central olfaction disorders that affect the pathology of central sections of the olfactory analyzer. They can be caused by various factors: brain tumors, craniocerebral injuries, aneurysms, and hemorrhages. This is another fairly extensive type of pathologies, which causes the disorder of secondary olfaction structures. Let's perform the examination. All right, raise your head a little. Open your mouth. Show me your tongue. Let's take a look at the ears. You have a traumatic injury of the olfactory apparatus, which requires additional examination and treatment. It is necessary to take drugs that will improve nervous excitability and nervous conductivity of the nerve fiber. I believe that a compensation of some kind will come over time, and you will be able to get used to the disorders that you have now.
Unfortunately, we aren't always able to regain lost abilities, but we can learn to enjoy the life even if we can't see or hear all colors of the world around us. Everything we perceive is inseparable from our experience, memory, and emotions, including taste, and it is born not on the plate, but in our brain. What will turn out to be more delicious, a dinner in an expensive restaurant or a simple meal with your dear ones? It doesn't depend on the cost of products, it only depends on us.